Hello, Christine. Are we all there?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
We all here?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. This time we'll call the meeting of February 1st, 2021 to order. Councilmember Spencer, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you very much. We are now going to move to roll call.
Mayor Velazquez,
Here.
Councilmember Perez,
Here.
Vice Mayor Resendez,
Here.
Councilmember Spencer,
Here.
Councilmember Burns,
Here.
City Manager Miller,
Here.
City Attorney Epperson,
Here.
Interim Police Chief Reynoso.
Here.
Thank you. The agenda for the City of Hollister City Council regular meeting of February 1st, 2021 was posted on the bulletin board on January 29th, 2021 at 9:54 a.m. per Government Code Section 54954.2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to the consent agenda. Are there any items council would like to pull? Do we have any items from the public?
I have no items, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented by staff, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll now move to item B1.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is to approve the recognized obligation payment schedule for the 2021-22, in short, the ROPS for period 2021 to June 30th, 2022. This has been approved by the Oversight Board, and this is just allows us to collect the appropriate funds from the county to pay the old redevelopment agency bonds.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards on this item?
I have no speaker cards, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt resolution number 2021-01, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We will now move to public input. This is a time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the city clerk before speaking. When the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the city council. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. Do we have speakers tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Our first speaker is Susan Logue. Susan, please go ahead.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. Nice to see you tonight. Thank you for being there for us and our community. As a friend of the library, I wanted to bring up the library committee. I believe there was a library committee operating this past year. So I'd like to see at some point who might be the members for the library committee this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carol Lenore. Carol, please go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I wanted to publicly comment regarding the last meeting under your committee appointments. I I probably wouldn't have had any comment except that respectfully, Mayor, you said that you like to mix things up and it's a good opportunity for other council members to get a taste of some of the other committees. Although I couldn't help but notice that you maintain your 9th year on LAFCO and probably COG, I'm not sure of that, but you did keep rolling on COG and intergovernmental. So you didn't really mix it up there like I thought you should have. I think Honor would have been deserving of a COG seat this time, or maybe on intergovernmental, being she has the same seniority as Vice Mayor Resendez, excuse me, Councilwoman Spencer. So I didn't really like that, but I really feel like essentially, and I lived it there, that you're impeding the growth of some of the other council members when you do that selective little thing there you're doing. But the biggest injustice of the night was you totally skipped over the GPAC, deeming that it's done. 3-member GPAC, again, I'm gonna say, is not adequate. And I think the other council members should be afforded the same opportunity to have somebody, the representative on there from them. And you as well could have a representative. I really think that would be more fair than just locking in you and Roland on the very important committees throughout the city. The more important ones as well. You maintain yourself on the fire committee for a long time now. So I just wanted to give those comments. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have no more speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item D1. City Manager's report.
Nothing to report at this time.
On item D2,
Nothing to report at this time.
thank you. We'll move to item F1.
Eva, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Christine. Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. This is Eva from the Planning Department. Item F1 tonight is a resolution for the City of Hollister to approve the annexation agreement for what we call the Rosati property. And this is a property that was pre-zoned back in December 2019 to become medium density residential performance overlay, which is the R3 MPZ zoning district. And it is about a 23.5 acre property located south of Santa Ana Road and just east of Margaret Mays Middle School. This annexation agreement would be between the City of Hollister and the applicant, and it would essentially ensure that they follow rules and things like our CFDs and criteria for annexing the property in compliance with all of our ordinance and resolutions and policies, as well as the master residential tax sharing agreement between the City of Hollister and the County of San Benito. So staff would recommend that the City Council adopt this resolution approving the annexation agreement as stated. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, is there any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Victor Gomez. Please go ahead.
All right, can you hear me, folks?
We can.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, Honorable Mayor and members of the council, thanks again. This is Victor Gomez, consultant on this property that you have here before you for annexation. So first, just thanks for the opportunity to share a bit about our proposal and the community benefits it brings along with it. As I'm sure you're all aware, the Rosati family has held this property for decades. They were, excuse me, they were very happy to participate in the widening of Meridian Street back in the 1990s, dedicating to the city at no cost the right-of-way for that widening. Annexation of this property will allow the city to establish and control the transportation link between Meridian and Santa Ana by the developer-paid extension of Memorial Drive. The importance of which was noted by many residents and discussed during town hall meetings held by the city. This road connection will help alleviate traffic congestion around the adjacent schools and designed in accordance with the Complete Streets program that you guys are all currently developing, if the city desires for us to do that. Ultimately, The development of this parcel will also provide an important pedestrian connection along Santa Ana Road from the existing residential to Gavilan Hills Elementary, creating a safe path to school for children living east of the site. Additionally, as a benefit to residents in the school district, we will be dedicating land and have already preliminarily designed an expanded parking lot and parent pickup drop-off area for Margaret Mays Middle School, helping with safety and security of children. The existing medium density designation will provide more affordable housing by design and help fulfill HCD's future housing allocation requirements. Our eventual application will also include a portion of the site designed for multi-family housing. So we will be committed to building multi-housing on site, which is desperately needed in the city of Hollister, as all of you folks know. So as part of the plan, we also will include a neighborhood park for the benefit of the new and existing homes in that area. So Mr. Mayor, with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions that you folks may have. And thank you again, Mr. Mayor and City Council, for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other speakers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Carol Lenore. Carol, go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Carol Lenore with the Hollister. I was going to say City of Hollister there for a second. I just wanted to keep it brief and reiterate that I'm in agreement with Mr. Gomez. This property is a prime infill property. It brings benefit to the city, most notably the Memorial Drive extension to the north, and then some traffic control there on Santa Ana. Those are just a couple of the big ones, but there are several things. This is a good subdivision proposal, and I think that you can rehash or hash out anything in the tentative map. You got time to do that. So I hope that you will look favorably upon this infill property that does benefit the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have no more speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments from the council? No question,
I
comments?
have a few.
Go ahead. Sir,
So, Victor, I have a paper that actually was forwarded from former council member, and it was talking about the project will exceed the staff desired 15% multifamily units, and you guys are targeting 19%. Is that still the target range, or is there a target range?
Yeah.
That's one question. And the other thing is, I did see some of the preliminary drawings and stuff like that, and it looks like a really good project. It's especially to get that flow of traffic over there. It seems like it just really bottles up over there. It is, I don't know if you guys ever been through there around time to pick up the kids, and I know I try to avoid that area because it's not good, no bueno. And yeah. So if you can give us a little bit more information on the multifamily affordable housing picture,
Yeah.
I think that would help us out some.
Yeah, absolutely, Councilmember Perez. Thank you for that. Yes. So to answer your question, yes, the city has had this sort of, for lack of a better word, sort of this loose policy around multi-housing. It has been the desire of the former council and existing council members to address the deficiency, right, in multi-housing in our community. And as a general plan advisory committee was shown just a couple of weeks ago, there is a substantial deficiency in multifamily units in the city, and more importantly, scattered all over the city, right? They shouldn't be concentrated necessarily in one area. So you're right, council member, we are committed to that nearly 20% component. That will obviously come back before you eventually for tentative map approval whenever we get to that point. But yes, we are 100% committed to that. The city has had sort of a standard 15%, and there is a bit of a market for it. So we're happy to, again, provide that. Regarding your traffic comments, we met with Diego Ochoa, the superintendent of the Hollister School District. Gosh, I don't know how many times. And Doug Letterbor, who is the partner on this project, actually is available to answer additional questions as well, Christine. But But yes, we've met with Diego a number of times and have actually stood out there, I don't know how many times during peak hours in the morning and in the evenings or afternoons to really look at the congestion issues around that area. And so we're very happy with the Complete Streets program that Eva has led and the planning department has led. We really think that's going to be a fabulous addition to the extension of Memorial Drive if this thing does come to fruition, and the movement of traffic as well in the smaller neighborhoods, as I'm sure you're aware of, council member.
So also, I just for the record, I just want to say that, you know, I'm not in favor of like doing a booming bust out here or growing crazy out here with houses and stuff, but I see a great need for our own community. We need, I will be advocating always for this, for our residents that live here now. I realize I think with that there has to be a give and take situation there. Nobody likes the traffic on 25. I sure don't. What I'm looking for is fulfilling the needs of our community, of all the people that live here right now. How can we help them? And I'm hoping that you can stick to that 20% and, you know what, who knows, in future projects or this project, even to raise that number up. I think that'd be great. I know you guys need to make your money on the single homes, but the design, the thought that you guys put into that, especially with continuing Memorial all the way down to Santa Ana, looks really good. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
I don't really have a question, but I do have some insight. During this pandemic, walking around that area quite often and talking to the neighbors in that area. Yes, it is not my district, but walking, I have to get out and do at least 12 miles a day. Otherwise I'll go crazy. The neighbors, the majority that I've talked to are all in for this project. It will relieve the congestion on the streets. As of just a few years ago, or before this, God, it seems like we've been in this pandemic for years. I would go pick up my granddaughters from Margaret Mays, and if you're not there by 2:15, you can't find a parking place on one of the side streets, and you're double parked, triple parked. The residents of that area are tired of not being able to get into their homes. And I think that Mr. Gomez and the Rosatis have done a great job, and this will relieve a lot of the congestion in that neighborhood. And that's all I have to say on this.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Burns?
Please. Mayor Tim Burns.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I would like to hear what the school has to say about this. And did I understand Mr. Gomez correctly that there's somebody that could speak to that element?
Yeah, that's correct, Councilmember Burns. You could either speak to Mr. Bezzetta, who is the facilities coordinator for the Hollister School District, and or Superintendent Diego Ochoa. We're not at that point yet of approving the map. They have seen, you know, obviously configurations of what that's going to look like. But yeah, I would highly encourage you to reach out to Superintendent Ochoa and or Aaron Bezzetta with the Hollister School District, and they'd be more than happy to fill you in on what's been happening.
Thank you. Can you speak to the traffic congestion and maybe the traffic flow and the pickup of kids and the drop off of kids? I've heard that is a problem area, and I didn't hear a whole lot of conversation regarding that.
Yeah, I don't have the, you know, I can't share the you know, conceptual map here during this meeting because of tech issues. But you know, I will say on the southwest corner, where you see the entrance, currently the bus entrance to Margaret Mays Middle School, that portion next to it is what we're going to dedicate. So the configuration of the parking lot's gonna expand, and also again provide that parent pickup drop off area closer to that intersection as well. And so currently what we have going on out there, Councilmember Burns, is two options really. So if you're at Gavilan Hills, you have two options that get back into the quote unquote core of the city. Number one, you're going to take Santa Ana Road to the bypass, or you're going to go to Fairview, right? And then come back to Ridgemark or wherever you're headed. And so that has really bottlenecked that whole Santa Ana Road area. Now, unfortunately, one thing that we saw happening, and I'm sure your staff and engineering staff could certainly share a little bit more with you, is in addition to the backlog of cars trying to turn onto the bypass going west on Santa Ana, we're also seeing vehicles actually drive through the existing neighborhoods that are there. So they're actually going through residential neighborhoods and cutting through there to make it to Meridian. Same thing is happening to the west, or excuse me, to the east of our property. Folks are cutting through the Brigantino development or the development a little bit further down and cutting through. And so it's created some certainly some traffic safety issues. And so the extension of Memorial certainly would address the traffic flow issue, but I'll go even a step further, council member, and say it's also going to address the pedestrian issues. Right now, between the Brigantino development and Gavilan Hills, you don't have a sidewalk. And so our development eventually would obviously prepare a map that would encompass a safer route for children to travel from the east of the property to the west where the schools are located. Hopefully that answered your question.
It did. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I do have some questions.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with one of my colleagues. I think that this is probably a very contentious issue, to say the least. And given my experience walking around and just communicating with the public for the last couple of years, I think that most of the residents are not going to be in favor of this, or are not in favor of this because of the backlog and a number of other things, right? But just for let's just play devil's advocate. I've got some questions. Ms. Kelly, if you can entertain me, please. I've been here for 2 years and I still, this gets a little mucky for me. So help me clarify some questions if you may. So I just want you to explain basically how this process works. So this is a county property that wants to be annexed into the city limits, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then in December 2019, a majority of the council adopted an ordinance pre-zoning this parcel for annexation. So that's what happened last, and I was on the no vote, on the minority vote of that, just so you guys know and the public knows that. But what are the next steps, Eva? Like, what exactly are we considering here tonight?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So I'll kind of start from the beginning because we're still in the beginning. So if a property wants to be annexed into the city, they come first to the council to get an initiation of pre-zone requests. And a few months ago, we had a property that also requested initiation of pre-zone. It was an industrial property. And so that's kind of the very first step, is they come to the council and they request from the council to initiate the pre-zone for annexation process. And if the council agrees, then city staff and the applicants can come back to city staff and actually submit that pre-zone application. And then at that point, we'll go through a environmental review process for what any impacts that could happen based on annexing the property into the city. And then so that happened back in 2018 and 2019 for this property. And then in December of 2019, the mitigated negative declaration CEQA document that was prepared for this particular property, analyzing a complete full build out at our maximum allowed density of 12 units per acre, was analyzed, and it was determined that mitigated negative declaration, which means that any potential impacts to the environment could be mitigated based on the findings that were in the MND. And so that CEQA document was adopted, and then the city council adopts an ordinance to pre-zone the property. And this property was pre-zoned into the R3 MPZ zoning district, again, medium density. And the pre-zone is essentially the city council adopting a future zoning district for the property.
Mhm.
And so then the next step is where we're at tonight is an annexation agreement with the property owners, essentially having them agree with the city that upon annexation, they will abide by our regulations and our policies and our ordinances. And so that is this item F1 is that annexation agreement. And then
Got it.
once the city and the applicant have an annexation agreement between themselves,
Yeah,
then you'll see our item F2 also on the agenda.
yeah, yeah.
The
Okay.
application will go to LAFCO. So
Okay,
that's
that
where we're
was
at
very
annexing the
helpful.
property.
That was very, very helpful. Thank you for that. So just so I'm clear, the only thing that's on the table tonight is that we're going to annex land from the county into the city.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And that land would have a zoning designation.
A zoning
was all that's
designation
on
of
the
medium
agenda.
density. Okay, which can, okay. So then by making this vote tonight, are we ensuring that the neighboring school is going to have a parking lot, Miss Kelly?
We are not, that would come more at the
Okay.
tentative map stage where you would actually be looking at a
All right.
project design and concept.
Are we ensuring that Memorial Road will get built all the way through, like, or one way or another at all by making this vote tonight?
Tonight, no, but for Memorial Drive, that was part of our CEQA document because that Memorial Drive extension is a part of our general plan. So no
Sure,
matter what applicant or project, unless the general plan
changes.
removed that from our general plan, that will always be a requirement of the city for any
Okay.
development in this area.
Are we ensuring that there's multifamily or an affordable housing by design? What does that mean, affordable housing by design, Miss Kelly?
Affordable housing by design is essentially building higher density, smaller lots,
Oh.
townhomes, row homes. So it's smaller units, smaller lots that are less expensive just by design, but
All
they're
right.
not.
So there's no
restricted.
inclusionary housing, affordable housing element to this project as of now, not that we're voting on tonight, right?
Right. There's no project, if you will. So
Yeah.
there's nothing, no conditions or anything restricting a project.
Okay, thank you for that. I just want to make sure. So if this land is annexed into the city limits to build more homes, when will we see these homes built? That's my final question for you, and then I'll make a brief statement. When can we see these homes being built?
I can't really say, as you can hear from the applicant, they clearly have a project concept in mind.
Yeah.
So they
yeah.
would be submitting, but the land has to be annexed, and then the applicant would have to submit whether it's a tentative map or multiple different entitlements, they would have to submit that and go through the actual project.
Okay. Can they do this, let's say 10 years from now, Miss Kelly?
Yeah, it could happen,
Potentially.
Soon, or it could
Yeah.
happen at any time. It would be the land after tonight and after a future LAFCO decision to
Yeah.
annex the property. It would just become a city property that then anyone could come with an
Got it.
application.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly, for that. So basically, my decision is this: nothing is set in stone. These changes, a lot of changes can still be made, okay? So we may not be here to see certain promises come to fruition. And I remember the very last time that this was before us on the council, a certain council member voted to approve this, and he rationalized it by the promises that were made to him at that time. Well, that council member is no longer here. They're not here. There's no sunset clauses and no assurance that this project will be built exactly how it's being presented tonight. Currently, the county ag land is protected by state law from requiring more homes to be built, not the city. So that's another thing that we should probably consider. I think we need to stop getting distracted by shiny little objects. We were voted in to protect the will of the people and their interests. And if this property is annexed in tonight, it is, in my opinion, my personal opinion, that we're doing the exact opposite of that. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question, Ms. Kelly?
Hang on, Mr. Perez. Did you want to be recognized? Go ahead, sir.
Councilmember Perez.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Ms. Kelly, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
How long does it usually take for a project like this to be built?
A project like this to be built. So the tentative map process, I would say at the very quickest is going to take about 4 months, which is very fast. But for a project like this, the CEQA that was done for the annexation, based on LAFCO's requirements, we have to analyze what is full build out. And because of the intersections at Santa Ana and Hillcrest, there may be some additional reviews, like especially potentially a specific traffic review, a little bit of further analysis. So the tentative map process, just to get something before the Planning Commission, I would say anywhere between 4 to maybe 8 months to a year, kind of depends on what we're looking at. And then after something's approved by the Planning Commission.
Eva, it's Christine. I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you speak more into your microphone, please?
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing.
Yeah, sorry. Let me.
That's why I'm asking questions again. Sorry. Go ahead.
Can you hear me a little better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the tentative map process, I was saying, this would be an application to planning, and then if there was no additional CEQA review or environmental review or traffic review, it could take as little as, I would say, about 4 months to get something before the Planning Commission for consideration. But with a project like this and with the detailed analysis of the intersections in particular of Memorial and Santa Ana and Memorial and Hillcrest, there probably will be some specific traffic analysis that's required for an actual concept, because the CEQA for pre-zoning a property is more general, and it requires just a review of the maximum allowed build out per whatever zoning that you're pre-zoning a property to. So in this case, we were analyzing a maximum build out of residential, but we weren't analyzing specific design concepts. And so I would say that the tentative map process alone for this project to get something before the Planning Commission would likely take about 6 months to a year, kind of depending on what analysis we need to look at and what changes come up and any comments. And then once we get to Planning Commission, and if the Planning Commission approves something, it can take anywhere from a year to, we're typically seeing like a year and a half for the actual final map and all the civil plans to get done with our engineering department. And then after that, moving kind of at a quick pace, you might see building permits being able to be pulled or grading permits. So you're definitely looking at least a 2-year process, if not longer. It just depends on how quickly the applicant moves forward with everything.
Is this property, because of its special circumstances and where it's situated, for 240 dwelling units? That's what the proposed site is, correct? If I'm reading correct on this old paper? So-
Yes, that's the maximum.
So basically what I'm asking, because I'm trying to understand what Councilman Resendez was talking about, because it's going to take too long and other council members are not going to be able to, things could happen within 10 years. So is that what's the normal time for a build out on a 240 dwelling units? What I'm trying to get at is, if it's going to take 10 years for each building site, then, and we're not going to move forward because we're not sure of that anyone's going to keep their word to the council. So are we never going to build? Or does it always take this long? So I'm new, you know what? I just got questions, and I'm not trying to make this hard. I'm just trying to get an understanding. So for 240 dwelling units, does it usually take this long, or is this one taking extra long because of the traffic studies and stuff we were talking about? Does that make sense to anybody?
And Councilmember Resendez, I'm not going to try to speak for you, but I will say what I think your thoughts were. I think what Councilmember Resendez was saying is that potentially this developer might not even develop this land, like if we annex it in. So it could be someone entirely new. I think that was,
Oh, okay. And if that's the case, then if it's annexed into the city and someone else goes to develop it, don't we have to go through the same approval process before they build? Or,
that would be correct, yes.
so is that correct?
Yes, I think Abraham is going to speak. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. You're spot on, Eva. Thank you. So yes, at this point, if approved tonight, then the next step, like Eva was mentioning, F1 would basically indicate that not only Mr. Doug Ledevor, Steve Rosati, Victor Gomez that are working on this, but any subsequent, and the annexation agreement indicates it, any subsequent owner would have to abide by the annexation agreement that basically indicates that they would abide by the City of Hollister general plan, rules and regulations, Hollister Municipal Code, annexation into the Community Facilities District, and so forth. The next item talks about sending the item to LAFCO for annexation. So that would be the next step. That would require a whole new public hearing with the Local Agency Formation Commission.
okay,
And if approved there, then at that point, that property, whether it be Mr. Rosati and Victor Gomez and Doug Letterbor, or if they decide for whatever reason that they want to hold off or sell it off, that can be a possibility. And I think that may be what some of the concerns are, that they decide not to move forward and somebody else continues with it. But like Eva was mentioning, if that's the case, we do have certain policy already locked in. For example, in our circulation plan, our circulation element of the general plan, it does indicate that Memorial shall punch through and shall connect to Santa Ana. And so that whoever comes up, unless with this update of the general plan that changes, which I highly doubt that would, because that is highly necessary, as we've been discussing, that would remain.
agreed.
And so the only also, as long as the general plan remains the same as MDR for medium density residential, requiring 8 to 12 dwelling units per acre, that would also continue, unless there's additional things that change that says, at this point, it should not regress. The housing state law basically says that from now moving forward, we shall not decrease densities, but if anything, increase them. So
Okay.
that would be, yeah.
So basically, this is an agreement for the property and whoever owns it, not with the developers or anyone specific.
Correct.
Okay.
So by signing, we are requiring the current owner to sign, but there's legal stipulation within that annexation agreement that says this owner, and that has their name, and any subsequent
Okay.
owner.
Thank you.
It applies.
That's-
You're-
If I can just clarify a couple quick points, Mr. Mayor, I won't take up too much
Go
time.
ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. So essentially what the point I'm trying to get across is a lot can change. Number one, we're going to annex this land in. It's going to increase the property of the value because they now are going to get city services. Number two, it's no longer going to be protected from as an agricultural land. Number three, I think the right way, we're right in the middle of the general plan process, the right way to protect all of these points that I brought up, to ensure that there's an affordable housing unit, to ensure that the parks are up to par, to ensure that that road maintains the same and the zoning maintains the same, because the zoning could change. It could change with the future council, is that we need to update our general plan, which we're in the process of doing right now. And that's the point I'm trying to make. I hope that clarifies some of the questions, that we should be focused on getting the general plan up to date, not building more homes. And once we have everything locked in, then we can start building things the right way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Abraham, are you still out there?
I am, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, perfect. Good to see you there. Thank you for being here tonight. I look at this property and I, without a doubt, it's going to eventually become a development. It's just a matter of what that development looks like. And I think there's been some good ideas and there's a lot more conversation. The problem I have, this area I can remember the other development that got built next door, basically jumping over a house. And it was the moment I woke up to the problems we had in our community with planning. And I can remember when that one came up, I looked at the plans. I thought, wow, this is great. And had a good conversation about the future of that area and the plans. But when I asked the question about traffic and kids going to school, it was brushed aside. I remember this by the developers saying, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be just fine. And there's not going to be an issue there with traffic or anything else. And I pointed out that time, how are kids going to walk to school in the mud when it's raining? They're like, oh, they can walk on the street. It's like, you can't put kids onto the street, especially in the rain. Let's be honest. And then somebody replied that, well, their parents can give them a ride to school. That's all great if you have parents who can drive you to school. Long story short, it became clear to me at that point that our general plan was not keeping up to date to what was going on. And that is the point where I really started pushing hard on getting this general plan going. Thankfully, it is in the process right now. It's moving as fast as it can. And hopefully we'll put the other two members on pretty soon here. So that part's good. But what we're finding out, the general plan is how out of whack our counts are as far as single family, multifamily, and with affordable housing. We're definitely unique in that we have more than 80% single family when most communities have about 55, 60% where we need to be. So a lot of work needs to go towards this to do it right. Abraham, maybe you can tell me, how many houses do we already have approved in the pipeline?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. So we have a list of projects that have been approved or entitled in our City of Hollister website. And we actually have a map that points out, they're all numbered. So we have a list of 1 through 30. I believe there's 30 projects in total. And then we have a map from 1 to 30. Basically, every project on the list is identified on the map as well. And so, Eva, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're there, but our understanding is that currently we have approximately 1,899 single family residential units on the pipeline and or entitled, and an additional 364, which is 16% of that for multifamily, for a total of 2,263 total units. And that's not counting some of the units, if I'm not mistaken, Eva, if you have those numbers, that's not counting some of the units that have actually been built right now, like Allendale, Cerrado. Some of those subdivisions are almost complete already, so that number would be lower. But total entitled of the projects that are right now ongoing, 1,899 single family, 364 multifamily, for a total of 2,263, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So, as I said, it's not that this property is not going to eventually become a development, but what I believe we should be doing is making sure we get through the general plan process first. Let's make sure we're addressing major issues we have. I can talk about a few of them. One of the biggest is schools. Now, we're hearing now that the high school needs to build a new high school, which is going to be over $100 million. That is because so many units have been approved between the city and the county that it's putting a tremendous stress onto the high school. And now we have to go back out, or the schools are going to go back out, ask the taxpayers to pay more money to build new schools, because unfortunately, the impact fees come nowhere near covering the schools. And that's not the fault of the county. It's not the fault of the city. It's not the fault of the schools. It's just the way the structure is set up from the state. And it just gets nowhere near covering the cost. And the best example is the new school built along Fairview, the elementary middle school, costs upwards of $50 million. The amount collected for impact fees for that school, about $15 million. The rest of it, we all had to pay for it. That's going to happen with additional schools with forget this project. we're talking about, well, now let's not forget, we got another one coming down the road that has 600 to 800 units. So really we're upwards of 3,000 units now, because that one is already annexed into the city and there's really no way to stop that one. It's just got to be better planning. So we're going to have to build another elementary school. And these are, keep in mind, this is just city. County has another couple thousand, I believe. So for every 2,000 units, that is one new school, K through 8. Again, let's not even talk about the high school. So we got some issues there. That's the first thing. Again, better planning. We can do better things, especially more multifamily. Roads. I can remember CHP speaking at one of the meetings when one of these developments was moving through this process of annexation again. And the captain said, no more houses should be approved until you guys get Highway 25 done. And all the commuters that use that highway every day understand exactly why that is. It is insane Highway 25 is now. And that's really a sad thing, because we should have had that thing fixed years and years ago. But that's on track. That's moving pretty quick now also. Hopefully within the next 8 years, we'll get that thing built, widened, and be moving along on that. What the general plan does help us do, though, is really zoom in on what we want the community to look like in the future. More, I think Mr. Perez pointed this out, more of the multifamily mixed in to this development. 20% multifamily in a development like this might sound good, but the reality is we're going to start needing to build neighborhoods that are upwards of 50% multifamily to do this right. Otherwise, we're never going to catch up for our local residents. And we're going to need to have affordable as a requirement, not as a statement, but as a requirement, 15, 17% that we need to be moving towards to have this in our, either in our general plan, or we need to lay this out to be clear. And let's not forget here, property tax, we just got the new agreement, but we only get 50% of that now. And it's of the 13 cents. And really we should be upwards of 75% to cover more of our costs. So there's still a lot of work to do. I think, again, with the willingness of the developer, and I'm sure they're going to be willing to do some good stuff. And I'm pleased to hear that they're going to handle the connection of the sidewalk from the other development to the school. And that's a potential problem. And I want to make sure that that's very clear, because I know once the other development was built, that property owner pretty much said, that's our problem now. They're not going to give us any land to, or allow any land to be taken to build that sidewalk there. So that needs to be perfectly clear and understood, because that was just the biggest travesty of all, that a developer could make millions of dollars but not allow a sidewalk for kids to get to school safely. That just could not believe that, and never want to have that happen again. But that also should be protected bike lanes. There's all these little pieces. That's why we're working on that general plan. One of the conversations in the past about this property was not to have houses backing up to the fence of the schools, but to give it room there to have a walking path, bike path, parking areas from Santa Ana to Meridian. So when there's events at the schools, there's more parking there. And of course, when people want to go use this neighborhood or the schools to go to use the playgrounds, they can go out there and use that without problem. And most importantly, you don't have houses looking out to the schoolyard for those people that just might not be well in their minds, I guess you could say. They should be pushed away from that fence line, so where our kids are protected and they have a space, a safe place to go from Meridian to Santa Ana. And of course, have the roundabouts on both sides that were projected. But even with those things, the issue Santa Ana still is, it has to be widened, because the other half of Santa Ana is county. And I don't know who is going to pay for that, or what's the adjustment's going to be there. So these are all really big conversations that need to be happening. And again, it's not that this project's not, or this property will never become a development. I think it will. I think with the right planning, the right time, we could do this correctly. But those conversations should happen right now before we annex property in, because once we annex property in with the laws in place, we're pretty much at the mercy of the developer. And we, I think, can all agree that we went off track with the number of homes that were built and the amount of traffic we're seeing in our communities now. So I would like to say, let's just get the general plan done. Let's do this right before we rush into approving more developments. Because really, one can make the claim that we're not approving a development, but as soon as this is annexed into the city, it's approving a development. And we need to be careful of not repeating the same mistakes. And that is all I have. If there's any other comments or questions,
So
you have
did
to
you
take
say
them.
that we were going to be able to have Highway 25 finished in 8 years?
It's projected between 8 and 10 years to get Highway 25. It's moving at a pretty good pace right now. Caltrans
So
is working
up
with,
to, up to 10 years then.
what's that?
So we're up to 10 years then?
8 to 10 years. It could take longer if it gets slowed down somehow, of course.
Okay.
Give you a good example. Highway 156 should have been done years and years ago. And that thing turned, a project that should have been done in 8 years turned into a 20, 30-year project or issue because of lawsuits and others that didn't want to see it widen. So right now, Highway 25 is looking pretty good as far as staying on track, working with Caltrans and our partners in Santa Clara. So that's looking pretty good, actually.
That is really good news. That's great news, actually.
Yeah, it is.
So actually, if we annex this in and they actually built in 10 years, it'd be like perfect timing?
Built what in 10 years? I'm sorry.
Because did I hear correctly? That if we annex this in and things went according to process, that it would take about 10 years? Is that
No,
what you said, Roland?
just so I think maybe I can clarify some of that for, and maybe Abraham can
I mean,
help
I'm
me.
saying, I mean, so if I'm just trying to understand it. So if it's going to take 8 to 10 years to get Highway 25 done, and it's going to take up to 10 years to get this project done, isn't that like good timing?
So let's step back for a second. All projects can, if they go through the process here, within 2 years, they could be under construction. It's just depending on the economy as far as how many units are built. Remember, we already have over 2,000 units approved, ready to go. There's a good,
Approved from what year?
I'm sorry,
What years were those approved?
which ones are we talking about?
Whatever ones you're talking about.
The one Scott, or the one right there off
West of
airline at Fairview was approved a few years back.
When
And
was
that's ready to
that?
get started. I forgot the name of that project. That's 200,
Is it Robert something?
Robert, there you go. That one's 250 plus units. The one over on, next to it was one out of the 90s that got approved early 2000s. The one on the hill on North Street was approved about 4 years ago, I think 5 years max. That built, I think 700 in 5 years.
I guess what I'm just trying to understand is like, because that's why I was trying to understand what Councilman Resendez was saying. It was that it would take about 10 years. And that's why I was trying to understand. It's like, oh, so that's why I was asking Eva, because I didn't know if I was not hearing right because of the microphone. And if it's going to take about 10 years, and then it's going to take about 10 years to get 25 done, I don't know if it's just me or I think that's good timing. Or we want to build the freeway in 8 to 10 years and then start to, after it's built, then start to approve houses?
Well, again, we have over 2,000 units approved. Actually, closer to 3,000 units are going to be approved because the other project there on Airline in Santa Ana is already annexed into the city. That one's moving through. That cannot be
Name of that
stopped.
one?
I'm sorry?
What's the name of that one?
The one at Chappelle. I have no idea. So that one's moving through. That's another 600 units.
Okay.
Point being, let's do things right. Let's step back. Let's make sure we get that general plan in place. Understand what we want. Do we want to protect the bike lanes throughout? How do we plan for the density? Because quite frankly, I think there has to be more density in that development here. and I think more multifamily mixed into it. So it's just not all single family. And I know I was pleased to hear some talk about multifamily, but really we're going to need to start talking about 40-50% in these developments of multifamily to really accommodate our community. It's going to be very important.
Can I ask Abraham a question again?
Go ahead, sir.
So you seen those, the drawings? Didn't they have bicycle lanes on Memorial? And I'm not sure on Santa Ana. And if not, or would it be able to put anything in writing that whoever buys that property, owns that property, develops that property is going to put that in like the sidewalk?
That's
Or,
good.
I mean, does it have to be, do we really have to have the plan for the whole city for just to be in place just for that one property?
Good question, Councilmember.
I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to get a really good grasp of this.
Sure.
Sorry.
Sure. No, that's good. I think that's what we're here for, to try to understand it as clear as possible. So at this point, those maps are just conceptual in nature.
Right.
Those discussions that have occurred in regards to what can potentially be there are, they're not locked in at this point. There are discussions, and they are things that you can request that when they do come before the Planning Commission for a tentative map, that they are put in place. And so, in regards to having a bike lane, that's what you're indicating. So when it comes to Planning Commission time, that is something that they should show. They should demonstrate that. And if not, we can say during the public hearing for the annexation agreement, it was talked about having a bicycle lane by the city council. And so that is when we put it. That's why we don't have any conceptual maps here, because really for tonight, it's putting it for the annexation agreement and sending it to LAFCO. The actual maps are at tentative map stage, but it's still really good that you're discussing all of these requirements that really should be placed. You're putting the potential developers on notice that is what you want to see, and it sounds like they're wanting to do that for you, for the community.
All right. Thank you.
Abraham, just to add to that, and thank you, Councilmember Perez, that's a good point. The difference between asking for it later and having it in the general plan is that if it's in the general plan, it's pretty much a requirement. And if a council comes in and says, oh, you know what, we don't think they should have to put a bike lane or anything else, that really can't be changed without a 4/5 vote. Is that correct?
Was that question for me, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes. So yeah, thank you for that. Yes. So in the general plan, items that are in the general plan are essentially it's policy. That's where the zoning implements the general plan. So if it's in the general plan, it is policy. That's correct.
Yeah, and that's all I'm trying to point out here is that if we have a policy in place, it puts the timelines in place, or the zoning, what we want as a community. We talked about sound walls. Do we really want sound walls anymore? Do we want houses 2 stories backing up to a sound wall or to a school? All these little things that become a big deal later, they make a difference. They make a difference. And every time we've ignored it, and this is not any of you, this is from the past, anytime it's been ignored and it's been a conversation, we'll fix it later, the reality is it never gets fixed. And this is why we have a situation sometimes where some of those bike lanes are kind of tight, and you wouldn't want your kids on those bike lanes either. But there's a lot of good things going on, everyone. And I think, again, from what I hear from these developers, I hear they're willing to do it. I know they can be kept at their word here. But I think we need to just make sure we're getting through this general plan, processing this, and staying focused on what the voters asked us to stay focused on. That's focusing back on retail, focusing back on commercial, focusing on industrial. I think if the great majority of this community has said, look, stop approving these developments, let's put another plan together to get more of our jobs within our community. Let's put a focus on this. And again, at the same time, we're working on the general plan to, when we're finished with that, we'll understand what we're trying to do as a community for future growth. And these projects will automatically fit right into it. So I'm hoping to have some good discussions later about some more of their ideas and incorporate it and use some of those ideas for in the general plan as we're moving forward. All right, one more time, is there any other comments or questions?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I don't want to go back and forth, but I want to be very clear. What's on the table tonight is whether we're going to take this land from the county and adopt it into the city. Legally, if we do that, based on this application, we have an obligation to follow through with the rest of the process. Is that correct, Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. Resendez, I'm sorry, can you repeat that for me, please?
So if we annex the land in based on this application tonight, are we then required to build homes after that there?
No, we are not. That all comes down the line as it proceeds.
Okay, and I think the point I'm trying to make is whether it's done tomorrow, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, that whole project can be changed unless we lock the policy into the general plan, unless we ensure that neighborhoods are built the way that our community deserves to have them built and that they've been asking for them to be built. That can be an entirely new project. It can, in fact, be all single family homes if we take that piece of county parcel to city tonight. It can be entirely different project in 10 years from now, and there's no assurance that, from what I'm hearing, the affordable housing aspect, the multifamily, the parking lot, and that the residents want that if that's what we're basing our decision off of tonight, there's no assurance to support that. That's the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, since there's no other questions or comments, is there a motion for this item?
I make a motion that we accept resolution number 2021-17 as stated.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
Tim Burns.
Tim Burns, Mr. Burns. Okay, there's a motion, is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. Motion carries 3-2. We'll go ahead and move to item F2.
Thank you, Council. This is Eva again. Item F2 is for the same property, and this item would be a resolution allowing staff to submit an application to LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, for the annexation of the property that we've been discussing, the Rosati property, into the city limits of the city of Hollister. And staff would recommend that the City Council adopt this resolution now that the annexation agreement has been approved by the council as well, and allow us to submit that application to LAFCO.
Okay, is there any questions or comments? Do we have any speaker cards on this item? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we accept resolution 2021-18 as stated.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Aye. Motion carries 3-2 vote. We will now move on to item F3.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you. Before you, you have a resolution accepting a Homeland Security grant. In actuality, you've already accepted it. It was a $50,000 grant for a backup generator at the animal shelter. We went out to bid and we received a bid. The sole bidder was Gold Coast Electric Services Incorporated. However, that bid came in at about $8,344 above the $50,000 grant. We met with the local Gang of Five committee that monitors the Homeland Security grant for our area. They did find some savings in other grants that were provided for in the past, and they graciously approved to increase our grant by that same amount of $8,344. So before you is an acceptance of a resolution accepting the bid and going with Gold Coast Electric Services Incorporated for the backup generator project at the animal shelter. and the acceptance of the additional money from Homeland Security, a total of $58,344.85 that will pay for the entire project with no general fund expenditures at all. Do you have any questions?
That's awesome. Any questions from council?
Tim Burns.
Go ahead, Mr. Burns.
Thank you, sir. Sir, did I see, I just want to confirm that we're using a local electrician. Is that correct?
Gold Coast Electrical Services.
Yes, they're local.
Yes.
Thank you, man. And did I read in the staff report that the previous cost was, did I understand it correct that we had a previous bid did I see it at $90,000?
Yes, sir. We went out to bid a few months ago for the same project. It was married up with an additional project at City Yard. And this portion of that grant, that during that process of bids, did come out in excess of $90,000. So this is considerably less amount, obviously, and a local company. So we're really happy about the way it worked out so far.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations. I really appreciate it when you really work hard to save the taxpayers money and get good outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speaker cards, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we accept resolution 2021-19 as stated.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will now move to item F4.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we are requesting your approval on resolution number 2021-20. And this would authorize appropriation in amount of $56,000. And it would execute a professional services agreement with SNPBus for spay and neuter services. SNPBus would host one clinic per month, with the exception of hosting 2 clinics a month for at least 4 months. And the purpose of those 2 clinics would be to help with the feral cat population in the city. So as we stated, that for the remaining months, they would only host 1 clinic. And then in addition, they would help spay and neuter 5 animals also from the City of Hollister Animal Shelter. And they would host their services at the airport or any other location that would be designated by the city. We hope you approve this resolution, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council?
Yes,
Go ahead, Councilmember Spencer.
with SNPBus coming in now, they will only serve San Benito County. Somebody from Santa Clara County cannot bring their animal in, or Monterey County or Santa Cruz. It'll strictly be for San Benito County residents, Hollister, San Juan, the whole 9 yards.
If you make that part of your motion, we can include that into the contract.
I think we should, because because we've done this before, and you get other people coming from the county, they're gonna take up those slots for our residents. And there are a lot of pets out there that people, especially right now, who cannot afford, $200-300 to have their animal spayed or neutered. And all the stuff that goes with it.
So I talked with Melanie earlier today, and we didn't really talk about that, so I'm not clear about that either. I think they have a couple of cards that people want to speak. I don't know, they might be more familiar with that. But from my understanding, it's already been pre-booked till next month with local residents, from my understanding. So it's great to put that in there, because I mean, if we're paying it, it is for our residents. So I think it is. But I also want to say, you know what, I was trying to see if there was like any numbers that they had to see how many, I mean, it's like, how many cats are they saving from running feral around here? And it's like, that is a great thing. I don't know if we could ever come up with a number, but.
I do know in the past, because this was one of my committees, they did an amazing job. You know,
Yes.
they would go and catch 40, 50 feral cats. And then, of course, they would release them again, or they would try to tame them and to become household cats. But they have volunteers that go out that trap, humanely trap the feral cats in certain neighborhoods, and they get those cats taken care of.
I think it's a great service to the community.
It is. It's a great service.
I believe they're going to be hosting a clinic on the 10th, and they're going to have 2 in one day, and they believe about 84 feral cats that they're going to be doing.
I think she was also looking for
Hang on,
other.
Councilmember Perez, hang on for a second. Councilman Burns, did you have a comment?
Thank you,
Oh,
Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Actually, I think my question was more for Councilmember Spencer in that I absolutely agree 100% with what you said. My only question is, and maybe this is also, as I think this through, a question for staff also. Is the county contributing any money to this? Because I absolutely agree it should be for San Benito County residents. But if the city of Hollister is paying for it, might we consider refining
good
it for
idea.
residents within the city of Hollister, unless the county wants to contribute some resources? And if they are, I didn't read that, but I just pose that as a comment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Councilmember Spencer, do you want to respond to that if you have the information?
Yeah, I thought it was, we, because in the past, it's been, we give so much money and then the county gave so much money. So this is not the,
Correct. I guess in the past, they have not contributed to this because
have
it was an additional service that the city sponsored. So if you want to make it just for the residents of Hollister, you can do that.
yes, I
Or-
think that
yeah.
should be specifically just for the residents of Hollister. And I think it should also be that when they bring their animals, which we all have to do, show ID, make sure that they are within the city limits.
Yeah, we just ask you make that part of the motion.
Okay.
So how would,
Perez, if you had a comment?
so I know she was also looking for other parking lots to have these events happening. But so with what you're saying, and it does make sense, the people that already have appointments, and if they're not in the city, they're in the county, would those reservations be canceled?
Can I, Mr. City Manager, if I can interrupt for a second there.
Go ahead.
And Mr. Perez, all of you have made a very good point, and thank you for bringing up Mr. Burns. I think the success of SNP bus has been really a tremendous thing in our community, and because it's been so successful here, it's spread to Monterey County. I do understand exactly what Mr. Burns is saying. And we did that first year as that pilot, bring it in and show proof of concept there, and it's very successful. Is it possible to get to the county or through the shelter where they share half the cost on this, so it doesn't become an issue of just only city residents? I mean, we're one community, but definitely we want the county involved in this and paying their fair share of this. How do we have that happen quickly, Mr. City Manager, rather than, say, for an example, having to tell some of those that are registered now that they can't participate this week? Is that something that can be done quickly through the expenses of the shelter where they pay half of the cost? Because I'm sure the county supervisors probably feel the same way on this, very positive on this. I just want to make sure we're not slowing anything down. for our-
Correct. And I can have a conversation with the county also. And
So
see if-
how,
I mean, I can come back to the council and say if they contributed or not, and then we can make a modification to the contract at that time if that's necessary.
so tonight would be as proposed, and then if the county decides not to participate, then we would change the contract to only for city residents?
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're clear. Like, I would hate to see somebody who lives in the county be turned away. This is such an important program for our entire community, so just want to make sure we're clear on that. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
And as a reminder to the mayor and council that cats probably don't know where the county lines are.
Those feral cats seem to run wild, don't they? Council member, our Vice Mayor Resendez.
Thank you. I was on that ad hoc committee with Councilmember Spencer, and I thought I remembered that they were going to put in, the county was going to put in. And so I agree with her that number one, this is an important service. Number two, I think it should be countywide for sure. At this point, I would suggest that we ask the county what happened, or follow up with what happened to that promise, I guess, back then, because my understanding was, Councilmember Spencer, that they were going to contribute to part of it. So let's follow up on that. I would, a lot of the feral cats are outside of the county, and these people do an amazing job. I've got to tour it. I think Councilmember Spencer, I saw her out there a couple times. They're doing a fantastic service for the entire community. I'd hate to limit it. So I would say, let's ask the county to, there's a whole new board of supervisors. Let's ask them what happened to that. And let's see if they can either match for another, whatever that you were doing 56,000 per year, maybe they can match that. But let's see if they can do that. I would be very hesitant to limit it just to the city residents. And I think as far as like it being out of county, I think that goes without saying. This is our money, our public's money here. And yeah, I most definitely would support putting a clause in the contract to ensure that it's within our county.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, did you say you have no speakers?
That's correct, sir. No.
Okay, thank you. So just to go back and clarify, City Manager, your recommendation then would be to go ahead and, if approved tonight as is, but come back and if the county decides not to participate, that we can adjust the contract or adjust the limitations?
Yeah, I would actually say if you could make it part of the motion to make it at a minimum to they have to live within San Benito County.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion from council?
Okay. I make a motion to accept resolution number 2021-20 as stated, with the amendment that it's within the county of San Benito.
That's a resident, right?
Yeah, San Benito County residents.
Thank you very much. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second the motion and the friendly amendment, Mr. Mayor.
A motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion. Thank you all. Motion carries. We'll move to item G1, reports from council members regarding their committees. Councilmember Burns.
I have nothing to report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Spencer.
Well, I haven't had any meetings, but I do have one question. I've been on this one committee. I was on it for the first 2 years. I'm back on it again. It's the Pajaro Water Regional Water. Why are we put on that? We are not ever at any of the meetings. We're not even to be at the meetings. So why do we have that?
That is an excellent question. From what I understood, it's been a standing committee for years, and if we're not participating, we need to know so we can take ourselves off of that.
Yeah, when you put me on it, my very first, when I first was elected, very first meeting I went, and she kind of looked at me like, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm supposed to be on this committee. And she said, no, you do not come here. So I never went back.
Well, we'll have none of that. Let's fix that problem. Thank you for bringing that up, and we'll look into it. City Clerk, if you can find out what is going on that, that'd be helpful for us.
I could definitely do that. And if it is a non-existent committee, I can bring back a report asking for it to be removed from our list.
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Spencer, if you can clarify, it is a existing committee, but they're not asked, they don't want the city involved. Is that what your point was?
Because I know that it's myself and the city manager that are supposed to be, we both sit on this committee, but we never go. I mean, I didn't go the last 2 years, and I not really I don't think they want us there this time.
Do you happen to know if the county does go?
I do not know. Because when I went the very first time, 2 years ago, this month, I think it was at the county office. And when I walked in, they just said that, no, the city doesn't sit in on this.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing it up. Very important.
No problem.
Councilmember Perez?
Actually, I have no committees to report on yet. I do, is this a good time to let you know what's going on some of my emails that I've been getting?
That'll be informational reports.
Okay.
Next
Yeah.
item. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
Councilmember, Vice Mayor Resendez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We went to COG since we last met, and then the only thing that happened is we elected a chair and a vice chair, and then we had one closed session item to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I had no other committees other than just what Mr. Resendez reported. We'll move now to item G2, informational reports. Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to start by announcing that I've selected my planning commissioner and my parks commissioner, and I've reached out to the city clerk to move this forward. And so for the planning commission, I've selected Salvador Mora, and for the parks commission, I've selected Brian DeCarly. And I'm very pleased, and I think we're going to do some great work working together. And so I look forward to having those folks involved in the city. And everybody knows who Mr. Mora is. Mr. Mora is somebody that is a mortgage loan officer, lending officer, as I understand.
Mr. Burns, I think that's an item. And
It is
item.
Oh,
5.
all right. I'm sorry. Well, the cat's out of the bag, but I
Put it
apologize.
back in that bag, would you? Let's
Call the snip bus.
call this.
I apologize for that. Then
Okay, sir. Any other updates?
I am at a loss for words, which is rare in my world. No, sir, I'll pass at this point. Thank you, and I apologize.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Spencer?
Oh, yes. So on Wednesday, I have brought this up to the council before about our precious tumbleweeds. And I know it's a problem. On Wednesday morning, a gentleman pulled up in front of my home with a tumbleweed about 5 feet wide and about 5 feet tall, and brought it up to my front door and left it there. Later that morning, I guess he did it to the city. So it took me a while to figure out how to get rid of that big of a tumbleweed. And I will say that I was very angry. I'm just hoping I don't have tumbleweeds now growing in my front yard. But I thought about it and everything else. The railroad will not do nothing. They will not even answer the phone. So I'm asking the city I'm asking the chief of the fire department. This is a fire hazard. It could cause a fire on the side of the road, could cause houses to burn. Is there any way that we can get the fire department to declare this area a fire hazard and go in and get rid of these tumbleweeds?
Well, okay, so this is in the hands of code enforcement. Code enforcement's been following up on it. It is a nuisance. They've been talked to about this, and there has been no response. As you mentioned earlier, for us to do anything about it, all we could do is make a request from Public Works to address it. Other than that, it's at the hands and the mercy of the railroad. And for that matter, I feel at the same loss that you are. I've heard about this. I got the emails on it, and it's unnecessary for this gentleman to be placing these items. I understand his frustration, but we're frustrated too with the loss of having an avenue to address this and to mitigate it.
Yeah, I took pictures and sent them to our city manager, Mr. Miller. And I understand that this gentleman is very frustrated. I'm frustrated. But to come to my home and dump one of these in my front yard, not even in my front yard, at my front door, it needs to be taken care of. And I mean, it's got to be done. These residents are angry. I do know I saw one that looks like the size of a Peterbilt on the side of the road, but it's on the city's property on Highway 25 that needs to be, I think we need to get at that before it causes an accident. But definitely those ones along, what is that, Prospect and Hawkins and all that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of them, and they're getting loose. You get a big wind, and I mean, I've had so many complaints in the last 3 months. I'm now called the tumbleweed woman.
So, Councilman, let me try to do some research and see what I could do by imposing a threat to public safety in that area. And if I can, if there's something within the state that gives me that authority to impose that, that's the best course of action at this time.
Okay, thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very, thank you for bringing that up. It's very frustrating with the railroad company to just do as they please and not help us with some of the, as you know, it's not the only area that has problems on railroad property. It's just very frustrating. So thank you for bringing it up again. Councilmember Perez?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. I have some residents getting a hold of me concerning the Dunn Park, 6th and Powell, and also 6th and West, as far as why we only have a two-way stop sign instead of a four-way. And from my understanding, it's like we need to get a traffic study done. So if we could, I guess if this is where I request that, I'd like to get that done. Also on 6th Street, I think this would be more towards the city department, between, again, West and Monterey, there is no street light. What we would have to do to see about putting one there, or why it doesn't have one there. And from talking to a couple other residents, I guess there's a couple other streets that need some lights. I don't know how we would go around I know how to do that, but I don't know who would go around looking for streets that need lights, but I think lights are important. Also, you were talking about the GPAC meeting, getting all the general plan in order. I think that's a great idea. I'd love to see where we wouldn't have to go through what we had to go through earlier. If we can have something in plan, that would be great. My question is for the members of that committee. It's like, so right now we have 3 people, and so
Yes.
we'll be updating that real soon as far as I hear. But so we're going to update, or we're going to bring it up to speed, and that's going to be 5 seats. That's 2 council, 2 planning commission, and 1 resident. And is it possible to get more of a residence, more residents in there instead of just having a 5 seat, turning that into a 7, to get more of the public input as to what they want their future to be in this city?
I can kind of answer that. What the company does that came in to do this project, they bring in residents. They're constantly working with residents to get input on what their vision is. That's really what they present at the GPAC meetings, is what the residents are asking for to implement in our plans. So they get a lot of as a matter of fact, if you haven't listened or had a chance to go back and listen to one of them, I would highly recommend going and seeing some of the videos. Most of everything, of what comes from GPAC comes from the residents. And I've been really impressed by the participation of the residents so far on the GPAC, and very little as far as the board members. We listen to what they say, help understand some of the other issues are happening within the community. So it's been pretty impressive so far.
Awesome. So I'm trying to understand what you're saying. So basically, one person comes in, or they bring in a consensus of what the community wants.
Yeah, Abraham could probably explain it much better. He's been working directly with the person the company we hired. Is Abraham still there?
Yeah, he's coming up.
He's coming to the podium.
And let me pull aside for a second. City Attorney, since it's not agendized, is this something we could be having a fuller discussion on, or is this something we should talk about once we request for the other 2 seats to be filled?
I think that at this point, Mr. Mayor, having Mr. Prado respond to the question that was asked and address that very briefly would be sufficient. And then
Perfect.
if there's direction otherwise, we can proceed there, but it would need to be agendized for a full discussion.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Epperson. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Yes, so during the GPAC meetings, they're open to the public and we advertise them. We have a whole web page dedicated to the update of the general plan, and we advertise and we encourage public participation. And so as we're discussing each item, we allow for the public to be able to present or be able to comment. The majority of the meetings, as you know, the general plan update highly consists of public participation. It's probably one of the most prime aspects of the update of the general plan. We're running into a big issue with COVID. However, I think we've done a really good job and still trying to reach out. Paul has helped us tremendously with the telecommunication aspect of it, to be able to have the members of the public still be able to participate and be able to comment. So that aspect of it has been going, in my opinion, really well. I do agree, though, that it would be great, though, to have that GPAC complete. But the public participation, as the mayor is alluding to, has been really tremendous in shaping what we're doing for the update of the general plan.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Mr. Perez, do you have any more updates on anything for your district?
Actually, yeah, I'm not sure if that even answered my question. I mean, nothing. It's just that I think there's just a difference between participating and having a vote. So yeah, I'll think about that some more. That's it for tonight. Oh no, I'm sorry. How could I forget? The rain. I make a motion that we stop the rain. Just kidding. The floods, alleys. I've got multiple emails and multiple knocks on my door because of the alleys are flooding. In fact, I have the first email I got, I believe it was Friday night. I actually went in my garage and seen water in my garage because I have an alley also, because there's no drainage. So I just want to, what I'm doing is just I'm creating a folder for alley complaints, repairs, suggestions. Just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Vice Mayor Resendez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just piggyback off of what Councilmember Spencer had stated, I think it's a little concerning that somebody put a tumbleweed in front of her house or city hall. I would just suggest that we look at the Ring cameras, Brett, especially during these times. We don't want people coming to our houses to harass us. And if there's any action that can be taken as far as like law enforcement, we should probably look into that. And if there's any type of citations, that concerns me. Aside from that, I, along with a couple of my colleagues on the dais, we attended the new mayor and council members annual or biannual meetings. Okay, from the League of Cities. And a couple of things that I took from there are, number one, and I probably should have brought this up earlier, is that we need to do a roll call vote for every vote when we're teleconferencing. That's something new that I learned we haven't been doing, and I think everybody's doing that. So that's the new standard. And then another thing that I learned that I didn't know from previous, actually it wasn't even around previously, was that there's a new law for social media. I'm sure that that everybody's gotten a lot of emails about it, but they went into it pretty deeply. And essentially it says like, you shouldn't give any opinion one way or the other. You shouldn't give an opinion on social media. It can violate certain laws like the Brown Act, right? So we should use social media to get people to come to a meeting is generally what they said. We shouldn't use it to say their opinion one way or the other, or to get people to tell us theirs either. So that's something we shouldn't be doing now with this new law. Apparently there was a case precedent set that we have to abide by this. And basically what the rationale was, like, it isn't fair to the other members of the public because it wasn't properly noticed. And we should never like or comment another city council member or mayor's post in regards to city business. That can violate the Brown Act as well. So if you're sharing pictures of your grandkids and we like it or comment on it, that's fine. But if we're talking about any type of business, it can give the perception of a Brown Act violation. So that's something new I learned. Lots of other things. It was very informative. And, you know, I appreciate going. I think there's new things that we can learn every time that we go. So there are some people that have been going that I think that were on there. So they're like for 16 years and they go every time they can and they learn something new. So I liked it. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is for Brett. We had the discussion a while back about the fees for for building fees. Is that ready to present yet? Did we get the update on that?
Oh, yeah, I'll have Mr. Epperson answer that question because we just discussed that this morning. So good timing.
Well, maybe you don't need to bring it. Maybe you can bring it to the next meeting. What I was going to ask for is if we could also talk about the impact fees. We talked in the past about some of those need to be increased. I'd like to at least look at the park fees again and some of the maybe the road fees or different areas for impact fees, because I think we're still trying to catch up. We're nowhere near where we need to be yet, and I think fully understand now the importance of impact fees to cover some of these original costs. Is that something we could?
Yeah, we can bring that at a future council meeting. I would ask probably like the first meeting in March.
That would be great. I'd appreciate that. The other thing I do want to thank is the staff, the maintenance crews out there. The rains came in. They did a good job getting everything cleaned up before those the rains flooded our streets. So good job to them. Of course, they could not save the alleys, as Councilmember Perez pointed out. So, you know, we lost a good year as far as the roads, the work we were trying to do. And that was very disappointing. The past years that we didn't get those roads done as we were all hoping for. So what I'd like to do is on the next agenda, put together an ad hoc committee to talk about the roads, to make sure we get these things done this year, because we have to stay on this. We have to be very aggressive on this, and that includes those alleys. I did go drive some of the alleys after the rains, and yeah, pretty hard to get through there without a 4x driving through those alleys, and that's something we've been talking about way too long. So we could do that. Talk about ad hoc for the roads and even the parks. I know there was a discussion about the handicap equipment at one of the parks, but in the past, the agreement or what we wanted as a council was to provide some of this equipment throughout all the parks. I don't know where that went wrong or what happened, but if we can put together the ad hoc committee to make sure we're doing those upgrades and get us back on a time schedule. Maybe these ad hocs could be for 6 months just to get these projects done and stay on task on this, because they're too important. It's a shame that we lost, I think, on that a couple of years also, as far as some of the handicap or special needs equipment that we were planning on introducing to the parks and never seeing it happen. So if we could put that on, I'd be very happy and very thankful. And I'm sure the community would feel the same way.
Will do.
Thank you, sir. City Manager, do you have any reports?
Nothing to report at this time.
City Attorney,
No report, Mr. Mayor.
City Clerk,
Nothing to report.
Chief?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to share with the council that on Friday, Dan Wynn retired from the Hollister Police Department. He served the city for 29 years in various
Wow.
locations, yes. And it was sad that with COVID, we can't do a proper celebration. And we did get together a little bit, as many as we could at the PD to wish him a great retirement. But he has done fantastic work for the city, and he's going to be missed. He's still around, but we're still missing him already. He's been a big part of the police department for a considerable amount of time, and he's been doing fantastic work. And I hope we get to continue working with him in some capacity or another. But I just wanted to mention his contribution and his retirement on Friday.
Absolutely. Wishing him the best. Good man.
And if I may, I also wanted to, if I could use this time to encourage everyone, as soon as you're available, as soon as you can, and qualify for the vaccine, to please go out there and register with the health department. I'm really disappointed at this point that our police department has not received, our officers have not received vaccines yet. I know other first responders have, and they're all essential part of our community. But speaking of, as someone who's been afflicted with the disease earlier last month, you never know how it's going to affect you. And there's a lot of people where they're asymptomatic or they just get over it really quick. And there's people, as you know, that ultimately don't make it, and people who suffer through it for months. And I'm here to say that this is no joke. This is serious, and you never know how it's going to affect you. And I just want to encourage everyone, as soon as you can, to take the proper steps to protect yourself and your loved ones. And that's all.
Thank you for that. Very important. Okay, we are now going to move to item G3.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce Don Reynolds from the city manager from the city of San Juan Bautista.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great. I had a few slides to share, and I can share my screen, or I don't know if Brett, if you have those slides. Just wanted to introduce our project to the City Council, and thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity. Am I able to share my screen? I'm not familiar with this software.
Mr. Reynolds, you can try.
I can try?
Is share screen on at the bottom of your screen?
No, it's not. Shoot. Okay. Well, that's okay. That's the way it goes. All right. Sorry about that. I've given the show before, so we can do this again. My name's Don Reynolds. I'm the city manager of the city of San Juan Bautista. Thank you again.
Hold on, Don. You just got cut off. We're trying to find your slides.
Thank you. No, I can find my slides.
Mr. Reynolds, can you try and share your screen now?
Thank you. I am trying. Yes. Hold on. Bear with me. I had it up a minute ago. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, now that works. Didn't think about that. All right. There we go. Thank you for your patience. There it is. That's our awesome wastewater treatment plant. And of course, the mission. All right, we're going to start again and move through this quickly. Thank you for your patience. We're going to talk about the brief background of the City of San Juan Bautista's water and wastewater systems, an overview of the regulatory framework in which we are busy muddling through, our success so far in being in compliance with the EPA regulations, compliance projects, and then next steps and questions. And it's critical that we partner with the City of Hollister, and so that's why we're here today, to explore the possibility of new partnerships. And that is one of our City Council's objectives, to be forming partnerships to work through issues. So tonight, also on with me tonight is our City Council Water Subcommittee, Mayor Leslie Jordan and Council Member John Freeman. I'm hoping that they would have a chance to share their thoughts either before or after the presentation. Myself, Julie Passad, our city engineer, and we were lucky to hire on project manager Carl Bajarki, former public works director from the city of Morgan Hill, to manage this project for us. We operate with a licensed wastewater operator and a licensed drinking water operator. They are not here today, but we hired Tony Akel Engineering to manage our project, and Stantec are the experts that they hired specifically for wastewater. And Steve Beck is here, and he'd like to share some slides, starting with about slide 6, because we get into just a little bit of technical stuff so that everybody understands the scope and magnitude of the work we're doing. San Juan Bautista's system currently consists of 4 parts, and it may seem kind of obvious. Our water sources come from 3 different wells in our city. They're notoriously hard water with a heavy amount of salt, sodium chloride. And we've gone over the years battling nitrates and closing wells as fast as we can open them. The water distribution system is powered by the tank on the hill, the 1.3 million gallon storage tank, and gravity feeding to our residents. A lot of that water distribution system in the ground is very old. We also then partake in wastewater collection, where we use the standard wastewater sewer pipes to pump the wastewater to our wastewater treatment plant, the photo you saw when the presentation first began. And of course, the regular operations of our water and wastewater systems are paid by residents through monthly rates. And then the capital improvements are funded by, as the mayor was alluding to, impact fees and connection fees as we move through our system. So, but it's all paid through our enterprise funds. In regulatory framework, we have permits for wastewater issued by the State Regional Quality Control Board through the Clean Water Act. The federal EPA works with the state when a wastewater treatment system discharges to a public waterway or a creek. And our system has been discharging to, believe it or not, the name is No Name Creek. And so therefore we have a special permit and a special permitting with the EPA right now. When I first came on, the city had been inspected, a surprise inspection, and the EPA and Water Board came in frustration that we hadn't addressed our water problems. And so by, that was in June 2019. And by October 2019, the city received a 4-page letter, a full inspection, and things that we needed to do to make our systems better and to get in line with the permitting. For years, we've been violating our discharge into the public waterway. But right now we got our system up and running as well as it can. And the only thing we're distributing into the creek is salt. To make sure that we kept our feet to the fire, the EPA last August issued an administrative order on consent, and that's an official compliance order. And if we violate that, we stand a chance of sanctions and fines and penalties. One of the first things we needed to do to satisfy with the EPA was to consider various project solutions. And this includes a commitment then to take one of those compliance projects, or 2 of them in this case, and bring our water into compliance by 2023. So we hired Stantec and Akel Associates to put a water plan together for us, and to also put a wastewater plan for us. And those were done in the fall. And then in addition to that, we worked on something called the preliminary engineers report. And that's where our options came from, different ways that we could upgrade our plant and try and treat and remove salt at our plant, and other ways distributing the water over the surface and let it trickle into the aquifer, another option was to connect a pipeline to the regional plant in Hollister, which appears to have the capacity to take our wastewater, if that's something we can engineer and pay for. So that's our regulatory framework, working with both the EPA and the Water Board. These are the dates that I was referring to. The order of consent was done in August. We certified that the plant was up and running in September. Master plans were done in September, and then October, we approved the compliance projects. So we've made great progress in the time I've been there. I'm really proud of our team. We have some really skilled professionals working on this, and we're making great progress. So with that, I think we're keeping the EPA and the Water Board on our side. And if Steve from Stantec could pitch in, he's going to share the next few slides with us. That would be great. Steve, are we able to have Steve talk at this point, or I can cover for him? He's on if we can. Do you see, does the city clerk see gentleman Steve Beck?
We do not have a Steve. We have John Freeman, Julie Buzod,
Right.
Leslie Jordan, and there's 4 instances of Tony Ackle.
Oh, yeah, Tony
And,
Ackle.
3.
Okay, if Steve can hear me, he could raise his hand. No?
Okay, found him.
Great. Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is Steve Beck. I'm a consultant with Stantec Consulting Services, and we were responsible for preparing the analysis, looking at different alternatives for compliance. And first of all, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So as Don mentioned, the compliance with the EPA AOC required us to look at 2 of the 4 parts of the city's San Juan Bautista system. That's their water source, and then that's the wastewater treatment. Similar to City of Hollister, our solution to reducing the amount of salt that we discharge was to look at improving our source water. And the recommended project there is to go ahead and import water from the San Benito County Water District and blend that water with our well water, very similar to what City of Hollister does with their water source also. The city of San Juan Bautista has applied through the U.S. Department of Agriculture for a low interest loan grant. And part of that requirement is that we, as Don mentioned, we had to prepare a preliminary engineering report that defined the issues and evaluates compliance strategies. We were required to do an alternative analysis for that report, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then the other component of this is we've got 3 industrial dischargers that discharge into our sewer collection system. The city has an arrangement with these discharges to take only their domestic wastewater. The water comes from their employees, from the toilets and sinks, and not their processed water. And we're in the process of trying to develop an industrial pretreatment program to enforce that and make sure we're not taking their processed water. We've had some instances in the past where we believe that they have discharged wash water that they use chemicals and stuff for cleanup that are adverse, that have salt in them. And so we want to prevent that from happening. Our wastewater improvement alternatives that we looked at were alternative 1 was the on-site wastewater, looking at upgrading the existing wastewater treatment plant. The recommended alternative option there would be to replace the existing plant that struggles with compliance with a membrane bioreactor plant, modern technology plant. And then when we use the word off-site salinity control, we're talking about importing water, better quality water from the San Benito County Water District. Alternative 2 was to treat for the salt on site with the MBR plant, and also provide salt removal with reverse osmosis or other treatment technologies. Very expensive, and then you have to deal with the salt brine. This would be a very expensive alternative for the city to do that. And then the final alternative was to look at what we call the regional alternative, regionalization, and that's to send our wastewater to the Hollister wastewater treatment plant. That would require us to build a pump station about 6 miles of force main to get the wastewater over to the Hollister plant. With the source water control, the quality of that wastewater would be equal or better to what the city of Hollister sends to their wastewater treatment plant. So we went through and did analysis and looked at a number of different, did a kind of a decision matrix, not only looked at the cost, but also looked at the operation, reliability of doing this, and most importantly, future regulatory compliance, and scored these 3 different alternatives. And the alternative that came out with the best score was to send our wastewater to the Hollister plant and import water from the West Hills Water Treatment Plant, operated by the San Bernardino County Water District. So just in summary, the improvement project recommendations, we've, as you know, our groundwater is very hard, and most of the residents in town have water softeners, which, they convert that hard water, basically water softener exchange calcium, magnesium for sodium. That ends up in our wastewater collection system and impacts us. So the idea is provide better water quality so our citizens don't have to have the water softeners in the first place. And to phase out these water softeners, we would institute a buyback program. Again, already mentioned on the industrial pre-treatment, we want to make sure that our industrial dischargers are not adding salt into the system. And then we would decommission the existing wastewater treatment plant and convert some of the facilities to emergency storage and equalization storage, build the pump station, the pipeline, and then pump the wastewater over to the Hollister plant. And finally, the project on the water side, we're going to convey water from the West Hills Water Treatment Plant to the city of San Juan Bautista. So that's that in a nutshell is the project that we're proposing for the city of San Juan Bautista. This is just generally a map showing some different alignments that were looked at, represented by the green lines. And I think the option of trying to use the 156 alignment is not practical, given that you'd have to deal with Caltrans right away on that. So we're looking at an alignment that would, of the 6 miles, would have about 3 miles on county right away, and then we'd have about 3 miles through private farmland and have to obtain easements for that. And we're also looking at other alternatives where the entire pipeline would be in a county right away, but the distance would be somewhat longer. This right here represents the shortest distance we have, which would be about 6.1 miles. Next slide, Don. And then this is just the, as it stands right now, the proposed alignment, about 6.1 miles. We are exploring some other alternatives in case we run into a problem obtaining easements through this private property. So we want to make sure that we leave all our options open for constructing the force main over to the city of Hollister. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Don.
Thank you, Steve. That was great. In partnering with Jeff Catano, the general manager of the San Benito Water District, he's done this before, and Hollister has participated in agreements to buy water from West Hills and other things. And so he's offering a process that is a simple modification of processes he's used before. And the first step in the process to buy water from the West Hills plant is to execute a memorandum of understanding. And what I proposed in my letter to the Hollister City Council and to Hollister City Manager is that we agree to a similar MOU in the case of San Benito Water District, they will pay for the pipe and build the pipe and be responsible for it, and our ratepayers will pay for that over an extended period of time. But it's basically the water district's project, bring the pipe and then the water to our city. And so what we're offering is quite the opposite, where we would build the pipe and we would be responsible for operating that hardware in that pipe and bring our wastewater to Hollister and connect at your plant. So this MOU is interesting the way it's formatted, because it gives the city councils and the water district the opportunity to say no to this project at several steps along the way. So the first part of the MOU is actually a feasibility study. And when the two projects are at 30% design, we ask ourselves, is it financially feasible? Is it practical? Can it be done? Is this project, now that we're through the concept and we're into the details, is it feasible? And if it's not, then we have an agreement with the city of Hollister and the city of and San Benito Water District to pay the costs and find another compliance project. So I hope it doesn't come to that, but we just have that relief valve. We have that way out if we need to. And of course, if it is feasible, then we move forward towards a formal agreement. Similar to the Hollister regional agreement with Sunny Slope Water to buy water from them. It's a big agreement that it sets a 10-year term. It sets the rates that the city would pay Hollister for receiving our water, and we would pay like any other user. That's our expectation. And it's also our expectation that this could be done at no cost to Hollister residents, and with full acknowledgement that if the regional plant has current capacity, it wouldn't have to be expanded to take in our 800 or so residential users. We're a drop in the bucket, but it's just a very critical project for us. And so I put together this simple chart that takes some very complicated pieces and shows you the three pieces that we're working on. The fiscal strategy, that's all on us. And we're working with municipal advisors. They're called CalMuni, California Municipal Advisors. We just executed that agreement January 19th. We're going to bring the MOU forward for our water, our source water from the water district. That'll be coming forward to our city council February 16th. And if the council in Hollister is okay with this idea, we would start to draft an MOU for your city attorney and our city attorney to work through. So that's what we're hoping for. And to that end, we have three simple questions. Is Hollister interested in partnering with San Juan Bautista? And would you authorize staff to work together on an MOU? And if you don't already have a subcommittee, maybe your subcommittee could work with ours. And that would be a great way to just start the communication process moving forward. Vice Mayor Resendez is on the Water District Board. We already enjoy working with him. So if I had to pick someone, it would be him. But with that, I hope I could pause for just a minute and let Councilmember Freeman and Mayor Jordan say a few words. And then we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes, this is John Freeman. Good evening, Mayor and City Council people. I know some of you, and the other two, I look forward to getting to know and work with you. I've actually been working on this project for quite some time, since about 2016. Although I do admit I just was working on the makeup water side of the business and not the sewer side. So I'll cut to the chase real quick. What's in it for Hollister is, as you probably know, wastewater treatment works very well on a large scale capacity, and we would offer 800 new units without you having to build a road or a pipe or anything, and 800 new paying customers without you having to pay a road or a pipe, and you wouldn't have to hire any new people, and you could get some extra money to run your sewer plant. So that's what's in it for the city of Hollister. I think it's a good deal, and I really look forward to working with you.
Thank you, John. And Leslie, is Leslie available?
Hello.
Hello. Is Leslie, do you see Leslie on the raising her hand? Mayor Jordan?
Go ahead, Mayor Jordan.
Mayor Jordan, please go ahead. I think you need to unmute yourself, please.
We're showing Mayor Jordan unmuted. Might be having trouble on their end.
Sometimes we have internet trouble in our little town.
If I may speak, this is Paul De Silva, the Director of IT here for the City of Hollister. If this were to move forward, it'd be a good opportunity to run additional conduit for fiber between the two cities. That would be great. Just my 2 cents.
That would be fantastic. I look forward to working with you on that.
We do have a fire station out in San Juan Bautista, so it would help.
Leslie's having trouble. She's unmuted, but we can't hear her.
Okay, let's give her another minute. See if she can
I
get
think
on.
you could always try and phone in too as a last effort.
True, she can always phone in. If you want to.
I could put her on my speakerphone and hold it up to the laptop.
Whatever works.
Whatever works. Oh, she's asking for the number. Okay, I've got the agenda here.
Paul, as we're waiting, what size line would you need? Just the PVC, or would you run the fiber at the same time? Is Paul?
No, it would be whatever the rated fiber conduit. It would just follow the same path as the wastewater pipe.
Right. And it's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
It's a good opportunity. I'd hate to miss it.
Yep.
It might be another service we can provide them.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome. Welcome, Mayor.
Wow, thank you. Oh, man, I'm sitting here going, I'm on. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council members. We're already partnering with the San Benito County Water District on our water line and would very much look forward to partnering with you folks on our wastewater situation. If we could get an ad hoc committee together and help us, help you help us. I think this is an amazing time for the city of San Juan Bautista, both getting a potable water supply that will lower our salts, our solids, our hardness, and then regionalizing our wastewater at the same time. I think it's a long time coming, and hope that the City Council will partner with us and form an ad hoc committee, and we can get an MOU done and start moving forward. We appreciate anything that you can do to help us out with this. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Don. And look forward to working with the City of Hollister. Thank you very much. Sorry it took so long to get on.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you for contacting us, and looking forward to working with you all. So with that, let's go back to ask some questions of the council. Do you have any questions?
Tim Burns, Mayor.
Go ahead, Mr. Burns.
So I heard one of the San Juan Bautista council members talk about how there would be some potential income for the city of Hollister, and I was curious if the city manager could comment on that, as well as I'd like to hear what the city manager and possibly the city attorney's thoughts are on this project.
Yeah, part of the, might not always just be on the revenue side, but it would be on the, our expenditures. They would be paying into the West Hill water treatment facility. So that is a shared cost currently between Sunny Slope and ourselves. So that would actually lower our cost for our water supply. And then the issue would be for the wastewater. They would be buying in the appropriate amount into our system. And then plus, like I say, the more ratepayers we have, the less costs that we have for our citizens also.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do we have any actual dollar figures or anticipated or maybe even ballpark numbers?
Nothing really ballpark right yet. We wanted to see what the council's desires were before we really went into that to start looking at the feasibility.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
Yes, I have one. Can we find out how this will impact our wastewater treatment as far as capacity goes? I know right now we're like at what, 40-ish%?
Correct.
It's only 800, but
Yeah, it should have a, like I say, it's 800 connections, so it shouldn't have too much impact for us, but that will be part of the feasibility study, because we probably need to look at, so that'd be additional treated water that we would be providing also that might have other benefits too. So we have to look at the complete package.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council? I do have, if there's another question, I do have some questions for you, Brett. Maybe you could help. Let him finish that conversation. Brett, you did make mention of it, the partners we have when we built the plant, West Hills. We had the 3 partners. I think at the end, we all ended up putting close to 15 million in loans into that.
Correct. So they would be paying their fair share of those capital costs.
So they would be the 4th partner in there.
Correct.
And that would work that part out. Okay, that covers that part. So that's good. And I think, again, we made some wise moves when we took care of the chromium 6 and all those issues at the time. Going back to the wastewater, I think it's an excellent idea. We have the capacity. That's not an issue. I think we had, at one time we looked at it, we had the potential for another 15, 20,000 hookups. That was a few years back. The question I have for San Juan Bautista is more of a future view of this. Is, I know you had 8-inch wastewater line. Is that going to be sufficient for the future? I mean, once you do this, you obviously don't want to come back and have to upgrade your lines again. Is 8-inch large enough, or is that something you're going to want to look at 10-inch or something, or 12-inch to make sure you have the capacity for your future? I know you're not planning a lot of growth, but in case you had any large industrial uses or something, is that something you're going to look at? The other question I would have for San Juan Bautista is I looked at the different design layouts. I was actually hoping that you would choose the route along 156. And by the way, Caltrans is going to relinquish that as soon as the new road is built. I know it might be a problem now before the new road's built. So that's probably your concerns. But I was hoping that if you're going to be putting a pipeline through there, we could also make that into a bike trail between San Juan Bautista and Hollister to connect our communities. And we can both enjoy weekends riding back and forth on our bikes with our families. So if we can kind of think of something like that, that would be great. I'm absolutely more than willing to be a partner with your community. I think this is when it does make sense that we work together. You guys have done a good job at preserving your historical community, and I definitely want to make sure that we have the facilities to help you on something like this, that we be, at least I would be willing to participate in it. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay. Well, at this point, is there a consensus from our council to go ahead and move forward with some more information on this? And
I agree.
I agree.
I
think-
agree.
I think it's a
There's
great opportunity.
there's a consensus, and I want to thank Councilmember Freeman and Mayor Jordan and Mr. Reynolds for be willing to work with us as partners. So looking forward to the conversations.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
your-
you.
Yes, thank you.
Before I go, may I ask Steve, if I could get more information? You're with what company again?
Stantec Consulting Services. We specialize in water and wastewater treatment technologies and design.
Thank you. And your last name, Steve?
Beck, B-E-C-K.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Good night.
Good night.
We'll move to
Thank you
item.
very much.
Thank you. We'll move to item G4.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the City Council, good evening. Abraham Prado, Development Services Planning Manager, Interim Director. At the January 19, 2021 City Council meeting, staff was directed to bring an item before the City Council to discuss the timeline of the approval of tentative maps within the City of Hollister. And so we provided a transmittal to you. And also for tonight, we will just briefly go over what was discussed or what was indicated in the transmittal. We have a few slides that pertain to the Hollister Municipal Code that speak to tentative maps, and also the Government Code / Subdivision Map Act that also addresses tentative maps. So briefly, what I would like to do is go over the presentation, discuss the timeline requirements, and then I'm going to be going over the slides, and if you have any questions or would like to discuss some of these slides more in depth, I'll be happy to try to respond. There's also, we have our city engineer here as well, Mr. Mark Falgo, our acting city engineer, if you have any questions that pertain to the engineering aspect of it. But like to indicate that briefly, the tentative map, when a tentative map is presented to the Planning Commission and approved, normally it's approved with a list of conditions of approval. The tentative map itself shows, say, for example, 10-acre parcel that's subdivided into the number of lots that are going to be subdivided for whatever, if it's residential, commercial, industrial, whatever it is. And with that, we show the number of lots. We show what the lots are going to be for, if it's going to be for residential, there's going to be a park, open space area, parking, there's going to be parking in the area. But also within the conditions, we indicate that, for example, we want to make sure that there's sidewalk, curb, gutter, and there's detail on that. Very plainly stated, there's any easements that are going to require like future roads to connect to other parcels. And it's very, very basic when it comes to that. There's a lot of time invested on it by a licensed engineer. And the requirement is that once a tentative map is approved, then the city, per section 1640.010B of the Hollister Municipal Code, requires that then they are able to prepare a final map for it to be brought forward to the City Council to make sure that the conditions of approval have been met. And so that is where all the detail is. Sidewalk, curb, and gutter, they need to indicate, the width, type of material, all the details in regards to what the improvements are going to be on that final map and how essentially those improvements are going to look when they're constructed on the site. And so that takes a little bit of time. Normally, and it doesn't happen all the time, where normally the engineer for the applicant that prepared the tentative map usually is hired by the applicant to also do the final map. Doesn't have to be that. Sometimes it does change. And they do have 2 years per the Hollister Municipal Code to be able to get it brought before the city council to basically indicate that they have sufficed or they have met the requirements of the tentative map approval with all of the conditions of approval. Sometimes they may not be able to finalize it in 2 years. And the common reasons that we hear from the applicants is they're trying to secure funding for the costs that involve preparing those final maps. Sometimes what we hear is that they are in the middle of preparing the final map. However, they need additional time to finalize it and either get it submitted to the city of Hollister, or it's within the city of Hollister, and then the city of Hollister's engineering department is currently reviewing, because at that point, the city of Hollister engineering department wants to make sure that everything that was set on the tentative map, all the conditions of approval have been met accordingly. So we want to make sure that everything is met. And the majority of the times, and I think Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, probably 100% of the times, it doesn't happen on the first round. There's always going to be comments, and it goes back to the engineer, to the applicant engineer. They provide all the changes and all the details. And one of the big things is, for example, stormwater management. Right now, we want to make sure that State Water Regional Quality Control Board requires that all of the sites that are being developed are pretty much stormwater contains pretty much 100% on site. And if there's any spillover, that's, it's properly maintained. So final map, we want to make sure that if it's either a retention pond or detention pond that's approved, or if it's underground mechanism, that all of that is designed and engineered accordingly and appropriate to what the state requires and what the code, City Hollister Municipal Code requires as well. So all those details take a while. So timeline, the approval is for 2 years per section 1640.010. They have the ability to file for an extension as long as they come in to the City of Hollister within 30 days of the expiration approval, of the approval for when it's expiring. And then we can bring it before the Planning Commission through a regular public hearing. So we have to publish it in the newspaper. We send out notification to property owners within 300 feet of the project site. And then we have a public hearing. Planning Commission can say, yeah, we will give you the extension. No, we don't want to give you the extension, or we can give you the extension with additional conditions of approval. At that point, if there are additional conditions of approval, the applicant can appeal the decision to the City Council and say, I want those conditions of approval removed. Or if the Planning Commission denies it, the applicant can come before the City Council and say, hey, Planning Commission denied it. Would like to appeal the decision and bring it before you, City Council, for an approval for the extension. So if the 2 years pass and the extension, the Hollister Municipal Code said you can get it, indicates you can get a 2-year extension. However, the Subdivision Map Act, actually, it's a state government code. It actually says that the municipality can have a 2-year approval with a 1-year extension. And so that's what we're doing. Just on January, just 2 weeks ago, we went to the Planning Commission, or actually last week, we went to the Planning Commission. We had a request for clearest 60 lot subdivision. They wanted an extension, and the Planning Commission granted a 1-year extension. That's the Subdivision Map Act allows for a 1-year extension. So what happens if that 1-year extension is fulfilled and the applicant still cannot finalize their final map to bring it before the City Council? There's various options. One is that the Subdivision Map Act has various codes for automatic extensions. if they meet any of those codes, they have the ability to still keep it alive. If they don't, then the tentative map essentially dies, and the applicant will have to come again to the Planning Commission to reapply, basically start all over. There's a few sections of the Subdivision Map Act that I have indicated in the transmittal, and I included it in the screen here before us, which kind of gives a few examples of what the Subdivision Map Act allows for automatic extensions. For example, according to the Subdivision Map Act, or governed by the California Government Code 66463.5 D1, it indicates the period of time specified in Subdivision A, which basically says 24 months, originally approved with an extension of 12 months, shall not include any period of time during which a development moratorium imposed after approval of the tentative map is in existence. However, the length of the moratorium shall not exceed 5 years. I use this as an example because as we all know, the city of Hollister went through a building moratorium approximately from 2003 all the way through 2008. And there were tentative maps that were approved right before this moratorium was enacted. And so that basically allowed for all that time of the moratorium, essentially 5 years or so, for all those tentative maps that were still alive right before the moratorium to continue to be alive, to continue to still be active. And there's others in the Subdivision Map Act as well, that during that time, as we all know, right when the moratorium lifted, 2009 or so, December of 2009, the Subdivision Map Act had additional laws that basically indicated we were going through a recession. At that time, it was a Great Recession that started. And essentially, these laws come in continuously. We, as the city of Hollister, we get an annual report, state government laws of all the new implementation for the government, for the Subdivision Map Act. And some of these are included to where at that time, there was a government code that basically said, if your tentative map was approved by a local municipality on these dates, kind of around where the Great Recession was going on, then it automatically gets extended for 36 months. So all of that kind of kept a lot of these projects alive because of state law that takes precedence over municipal code. Those are just some of the examples. Another example is, for example, where if a tentative map, after being approved by a municipality, is being upheld by courts. For example, there's a lawsuit that's established. Government Code 66463.5 D2E basically indicates that the period of time specified in Subdivision A, which is 2 years plus a 1 year extension, including any extensions thereof granted pursuant to Subdivision C, should not include the period of time during which a lawsuit involving the approval or conditional approval of the tentative map is or was pending in a court of competent jurisdiction. So there's, additional government code that basically, like this one, that kind of keeps these tentative maps alive, even above and beyond the 2 years plus a 1 year extension of a municipal code. Another one is, for example, and these are, some of them are very precise. Like, for example, Government Code 66452.6 indicates that if a tentative map is approved and over $236,790 are used to construct or improve improvements that are off-site, that are not adjacent, public improvements that are not adjacent to the project, then it is automatically approved for 36 months. Why the specific $236,790, or why the specific 3 years? A lot of it, we believe, has to do with just state law, lobbyists that want to continue to keep these tentative maps alive. And so they enact them, their law, and then they're applied to local municipalities for implementation. These are just a few of the examples that we see. as I mentioned, staff receives amended updates of the Subdivision Map Act on a yearly basis from the American Council of Engineering Companies of California. We review them, and we see if they apply or not. And very briefly, another form of how some of these subdivisions or tentative maps are kept alive is, for example, how we did for Award Homes, how the city did for Award Homes and Twin Oaks, that they have performance agreements or development agreements. And so at that point, the city and the developer negotiate, what is it that we want to see on that development? And the developer usually indicates, well, if we're going to negotiate, we also would like to see if we can have additional years of life of our tentative map. And so it can also be established as a form of a performance agreement or development agreement. And this transmittal has been submitted to address the city council pertaining to the life of tentative map approvals. Staff requests the city council receive the report and provide any necessary direction to staff. We'll be happy to answer any questions or comments at this time.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? Comments?
Tim Burns.
Go ahead, Mr. Burns.
Thank you, sir. So first of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Prado. At my request, he was very quick but very thorough, and I appreciate that very, very much. And I don't know if there is an answer to this, but this is actually, I think, very timely based on an earlier council conversation this evening regarding the other development that we spoke about in the LAFCO case. And one of my concerns is, in my council district, we currently have 2 significant projects that are being built on Fairview. And I only know what I've been told, so I don't know that it's factually accurate, but it's my understanding that those projects have been approved for maybe as much as 10 years. And so having said that, the purpose for my request for the information was I would very much like to find a way to put some sort of a term limit or time limit on a tentative map once it's actually physically been approved, because it's my understanding that once you have a tentative map that's been approved, in essence, it's kind of the holy grail for development. And I know that developers spend tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in different processes to get to that point. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful in my comments, but I am concerned. And I know that the water moratorium and the recession certainly created reasonable reasons why those projects wouldn't have gone forward at that point. But I do want to try and encourage people not to land bank projects once they've gone through the exercise. And I doubt that that will be the case in most instances. However, we don't know what's going to happen until it happens. And for my mindset, maybe it's not possible, but I would very much like to see, for lack of a correct legal term, some sort of a sunset clause where once a tentative map has been approved, that they have a certain amount of time to go shovel in the ground and begin that project. And I don't know if there's a way to do that, but my initial thoughts would be 3 years after a project, the tentative map has been approved, they need to begin work. And if not, to maybe come back to council for council consideration. And I think that will conclude my comments for the moment, but I absolutely heard Council Member Resendez, Vice Mayor Resendez, bring up his concerns. And for the mayor and the council vice mayor, I heard your comments, I share your concerns, but I want to be reasonable, fair, and consistent. And I think if we put this out moving forward, if there's a way that I think we'll be better off, and we won't necessarily have to be as concerned about some of the things that quite clearly the mayor and the vice mayor are concerned about. And I hear that and I understand that. And so with that, I'll conclude my comments for now. Thank you, sir. And again, thank you very much for getting right on this. I truly appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate those comments. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Council Member Vice Mayor Resendez.
Thank you. Yeah, same thing. This is, I think, something that we had talked about and it just kind of fell off because of COVID and other things. But definitely something that I'm considering revisiting. I would suggest that we agendize it, notice it, and make a decision on it at a later date. But at the same point, Abraham, there are some other things that we were working on that we just have not, for one reason or another, just fell off, like the inclusionary housing element. That's something that we've been working on for a number of years. So I'd like for that to come back too. Along with this, which I think is perfect, the inclusionary housing element needs to be revisited. So that aligns with this. And then as the mayor stated earlier, the impact fee, where are we at with the impact fees? Those are two other items that go along with this and planning that I'd like to see, probably all on the same agenda. I thought you said the first week of March, Brett. So if we can get all those three things and whatever else the mayor asked for on the same meeting, I think that would be very productive. So that'd be those are my thoughts and my suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Abraham, I did have a comment or question, and I think Mr. Burns kind of hit it almost perfectly there. His comment was about the 3-year period tentative map. I was, my thought process was thinking more of a 2-year with a 2-year extension possibility. Is that something that seems like it's fair, or, and Mr. Burns, if you have any input on that too? I did like what you're saying with the 3-year. I think that's very fair also. Either way, I think we definitely need to be fair, but what we don't need to have is projects that are sitting out there. And there is a lot of concern of the past. I think really it's only 1 or 2 projects that were that happened with, but we want to make sure that if a developer is coming in, that if they're going to start doing work, they're going to do the work and not just get the tentative map and then shop it for another buyer and see what they can cash out on. Is that possible, Abraham?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. At this point, actually, our municipal code does speak to the timeline as mentioned, and it does say at this point it is a 2-year approval with the option of, if during a public hearing with the Planning Commission, they can get a 2-year extension. We've been only recommending a 1-year extension because that's how it's written in the government code. The government code actually indicates 1-year extension, but I believe, if I'm not wrong, and I can talk with the city attorney about this, if we prefer the 2-year extension, I think we can keep it that way if it is legally possible to do so. And then we can also discuss with the city attorney if there is a potential to, as a municipality, be able to have that sunset clause that say no more, or if no more extensions after that, or if there's a possibility that or the requirement for the city to follow the state subdivision map act in regards to extensions. That would probably be one thing that I would want to meet with the city attorney about to discuss.
And in short, all of that can be worked out, and we can certainly give an extension of more than 1 year. What we cannot do is give less than 1 year, since that's what's required in the government code.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Epson.
Thank you. That would fall in line with what Councilmember Burns was mentioning. So just to be clear, I want to make sure we're understanding this. We're talking the timeline once the tentative map is approved, not going through the process, correct?
Correct. Once it is approved, that is correct. Yes.
So they have a 2-year, and then there's the possibility for a 1-year extension.
Correct. At this point, it's a 2-year. Once it is approved by the Planning Commission, then they have the 2 years to bring it before the council for a final map, with the possibility of the extension. That is correct.
Okay, I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that's what Mr. Burns was bringing up originally, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm glad to see we're there. We just have to clarify it in our code then, so that there's not more extensions to that.
And that's correct, Mr. Mayor. And that's one thing that in addressing Mr. Epperson at this time, it would be good to discuss and see if that is if there is something that we need to do to the code to fulfill that desire from the city council, or in looking at the automatic extensions that the Subdivision Map Act grants, how to address that from the developer.
That's right. We'll take a look at it. I think it's probably provided for adequately, but we'll take a look at it and see if we need to amend anything.
Thank you, Mr. Epperson.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments? Mr. Burnt, how do you feel about that? The 3 years, the 2 and the 1 year?
Mayor, I'm absolutely fine with that, whatever the will of the council is. I just wanted to have the public conversation. I did have one follow-up question, if I may.
Go ahead, sir.
I heard, and I don't know that this is true, but once a tentative map is approved, I understand that even if council doesn't like where it's headed after that's been approved, that the development can go forward regardless of whether the council approves a final map. Is that true?
That's a good question, Councilmember Tim. So yes, once a tentative map is approved, then at that point, the tentative map has been entitled and with conditions of approval. So the conditions of approval that are stated in the resolution of the Planning Commission essentially indicates that the applicant or developer has to fulfill all of those requirements. And then at that point, it comes to the city council for approval of the final map. And at that point, it's basically a statement indicating that the final, that the tentative map has fulfilled their obligations, and they have a final map before the city council for approval. My understanding, though, is I would have to confirm and see if the city council denies the final map. That's one thing that I would have to check legally to see if it can still proceed for actually improvements, or if it has to go back for a majority approval by the city council.
Thank you, sir. I would just say I'm not intending to ambush you with that question, and I certainly
That's
have
fine.
no expectation that you would provide us with clarity tonight, but it would be something I would really appreciate to know more clearly.
Very well.
And recognize I'm a layperson, and I'm, this has been well beyond planning 101 for me tonight, and I appreciate that and your
Sure.
future work as well.
You're very welcome.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Would the council like to bring this back in the, I thought I heard the March meeting with a little more clarity as far as the 3 year?
I would, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to see it on the agenda as an agenda item, and then if I can add those other 2 items to that same meeting, I'd appreciate that.
Yes.
Mayor, we'll do our best.
Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you for that update. We'll move to item 5 at the City Council Committees. Apparently, I missed an alternate for the COG committee. I'd like to go ahead and, since Mr. Perez will be, if we're following the sequence, will be vice mayor next year, I'd like to see him on there. But Mr. Perez, would you be willing to serve as the alternate on COG?
Sure, yes.
Is that all right with the council?
Yes, of course.
Consensus? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and, is there any comments from the public before we move on?
Speaker cards, Mr. Mayor.
You do or you don't?
I do not.
All right, we'll move to item 6.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. Item 6, we had tabled item 6 at the January 19th city council meeting. Mostly due to not having enough applicants and needing more time to go over the applications you did have. And I had said that at that meeting on the 19th that we could bring it back on the 1st. However, in order to allow time to advertise, the soonest I would be able to bring back additional applications would be March 1st, due to the fact of the timing of newspaper ads and receiving applications. Even as is, by the second publication of February 5th, I'm only allowing till the 12th to accept applications, although I do throw in a clause or until the position is filled.
Okay. Mr. Burns, it sounded like earlier you were making a comment. Did you want to go ahead and finish your comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. So with regard to District 4, I've selected Salvador Mora to serve on the Planning Commission and Brian DeCarly to serve on the Parks and Rec Commission. I've reached out to them as well as other applicants and have moved their names forward to the city clerk to pursue that. Now, having said that, they're both very qualified in my opinion, based on a review of their applications and with conversations with them. However, I also want to talk for a moment, Mayor, if I may, and stop me if I may not. The current planning commissioner for District 4 is David Huboy, and he has been the planning commissioner, as I understand it, for about 16 years. And I wanted to be clear that it had absolutely nothing to do with Mr. Huboy and his qualifications or his past work. I think his work has been exemplary. However, as many know, I'm a strong advocate for time limits for different positions. And having served 16 years, and he served our community well for 16 years, and I absolutely want to acknowledge that. But I think it's time for a change in District 4, and that was part of what drove my decisions. And having said that, it's my understanding that he currently sits on the General Plan Committee, he being Mr. Huboy, and it's my understanding that there is currently another Planning Commission position vacant and a citizen's position. And I would strongly encourage council to allow Mr. Huboy to continue to sit on that at minimum as the citizen position. I know he's an architect. I know he's very conscientious and he prepares, and he'd be a great asset. And so my choice of Mr. Mora has absolutely very little to do with Mr. Huboy. But I did want to acknowledge his years of service and recommend to council that we move him forward to continue on that general plan review committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Perez, did you have anything from your assignments, or how are you feeling with yours?
I haven't come up with a decision yet. I'm
Okay.
waiting for an application.
You'll wait for the other applications. Okay. And Councilmember Resendez, did you have anything for yours?
Do I have any applications for District 2, Christine?
For the Planning Commission,
Yeah.
actually, I don't think you have any for any of, well, no, you did for the airport. However, Airport Commission was filled already. So you have no applications for planning and no applications for parks.
Okay, well, since that's the case,
Yeah.
yeah, I too appreciate Mr. Huboy's commitment and dedication to our community for the number of years. There's no formal decision or any type of law that says that we can't, or we can have somebody not on there because of term limits. I think that's something we can definitely visit at a later date, and we need to give them considerable time to be able to accept that. I have spoke to Mr. Huboy. Since I don't have anybody in District 2, I would be absolutely honored to have him continue as the Planning Commissioner as my representative. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right. So those are the appointments. If there's a consensus with the council, Mr. Perez, I think, still wants more time to sort out finding somebody for his. Is that process still going to continue then, City Clerk, as far as the advertising? Or Mr. Perez, did you have a few people you're already thinking about, or did you want her to continue with the advertising?
We're good with advertising.
Advertising is actually going to happen again this Friday. I advertised the 29th and the 5th, requesting applications be given by February 12th.
So then he could perhaps have his choice by the next meeting or the first meeting in March.
I was hoping to give those applicants a chance not to bring it back till March 1st.
Okay, so for Mr. Perez will be March 1st. So the other tonight, I've heard Mr. Burns had his choices and Mr. Resendez have his. Is there any other comments or questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speaker cards, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there a consensus here from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll move forward with those appointments, and then we'll finish with Mr. Perez's, the first meeting in March. Correct?
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, H, I, J, and K, there is no business. Is there a motion to adjourn? There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Who made the motion to adjourn?
Mr. Resendez, I heard.
Thank you.